Evening, all. My name is Dustin, aka Rope Aficionado, and welcome to the Dominance Dialogues. This is the podcast that we dive deep into the psychology, the sociology, and the cultural aspects of BDSM. Here we explore the art of intentional relationships and we create space for conversations that go beyond the surface. Whether you're a seasoned kinkster or curious about power dynamics, this is your place for thought provoking conversations that challenge and inspire. And tonight I'm excited to have Dr. VonHertz. Tonight's discussion is That's Shocking. Dr. VonHertz, would you mind introducing yourself and a little bit about your experience?
Hi there. Yeah, actually, I've been in it about as long as you have. I just got started later. I'm 66 now. I'm not really sure how I got. I've always been this way, I guess. There was just one particular event, long story. I don't want to go into that here, but kind of kicked me over the threshold. And Dad got me into photography and electronics and ham radio, and he also gave me that thing that says never get into anything less than 100%. Thanks, Dad. It's been an expensive journey. But yeah, no, it sings to me, especially the violet wand. Electrical play in general, yeah, but the wand, there's just something about the vulnerability of the bottom and the essence of the electricity. I mean, I'm an electrical engineer. I've been doing this stuff for over 40 years. There's no mystery to the electrics of it, but it just still, it feels that way to me. I like to work on the fear side of things. I'm also a bit of a sadist, so you know, if it's hurting, I'm sorry, not sorry. As long as it's within negotiation. But yeah, it sings. And you know, something I took a class on single tail whips. Doesn't work for me. Matter of fact, I had a gut feeling of I shouldn't get involved with this. Don't know where that came from, but I've learned to listen. One time I picked up a flogger, and this was an opening class on floggers, and the thing just didn't feel right at all. I mean, I'm an engineer, right? I'm not a woo guy. I pick up this flogger, and okay, yeah, but it feels wrong. I want it away from me. Ugh. Don't know where that came from, and I've never had that experience again. But hey, yeah, in a few years of experience, you learn to listen to those little voices. But yeah, oh yeah, having tons of fun with the wand.
So, what specifically got you into the violet wand or violet ray?
Well, okay, so the other side of electrical is TENS, EMS, that sort of thing. Lots of wires, lots of connectors, lots of complications. It just didn't sing to me. Knives sing to me. Fire sings to me. The wand, oh yeah, it sings to me. Explosives in combination with fire or the wand, oh yeah. Yeah,
like
I could do a whole
fire cups.
I could do a whole class on explosives, mostly flash cotton. You don't want to go too far out, you know. There's lots of bullshit out there too, and that was one of the things early on, before I even really became active in the kink community. I ran across a discussion between a bunch of people talking about the violet wand and whether it could produce X-rays with a regular light bulb. And one party was very loudly contending that that was impossible. That's a strong word in science. Like when somebody tells me something can't be broken or it's not flammable. I spent a lot of years designing life safety products, and we have all kinds of formal test procedures. Okay, yeah, I do all that. Then I go kick the shit out of it in the parking lot and then run it through the test procedures again because I'm a sadist. If it's going to break, I want it to break in front of me, and I want to know how it broke.
Oh.
But yeah, some things work for me and some don't. And I'm sure that's true of everybody, and it's a different set of things. And that's why diversity is so much fun. One of the things I like as an electrode is these, they call them figural bulbs. I don't know. It's got the little
like leaves in it almost.
Flower and leaves, yeah, and they're coated and they glow different colors. They're not easy to find, but if you keep your eyes open, Goodwill, that sort of thing, you'll find them. They're pretty, they're low intensity. A lot of people are scared of electricity, which works for me. I like that fear dynamic, but you don't want to go too far. If you pull this thing out, I'm taking, many people would call this a calculated risk. I'll call it a deliberate risk because there's no math. Ow. Like most electrical tops, I don't like getting shocked. I mean, that's pretty intense. And some people are like, oh yeah, give me more, give me more. I know one lady that a solid state wand on low power is all she can take. And when people ask, oh, what's the best wand? The one that works the best for you and your bottoms. And I can't tell you that. Get a hold of something and try it. Try before you buy is the best advice I could give you. You don't want to go spend $300-400 on a mechanical if a $20 solid state will do everything you want.
Yep. And I think it's
unless
important
part of your fetish is in the expense of the kit, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just acknowledge it and work with it.
That's an interesting thought. I guess I never really thought about that some people do genuinely fetishize spending money or having like high-end goods.
I will plead guilty to that to a point. I have Halliburton cases and Pelican cases for my gear, and it's all organized and nice because that's the way I want it. Sure. It would work just as well out of a paper bag. But it wouldn't
not be as safe though.
It wouldn't present as well.
Well, and at least the Pelican case has function, right?
Harbor Freight's a lot less expensive though.
Yes, they are, and they're about the same. They're probably made at the same manufacturer, right?
I wouldn't go that far. I'd say Harbor Freight's probably like 90% of a Pelican case.
Fair.
But hey, gets the job done.
It's a fraction of the price, right?
Yeah.
So
make your choices.
I think before we go too far in the conversation, we should probably define what electric play is and how it fits into BDSM.
Okay. Well, electrical play, strictly defined, is anything that involves electrical charges, electrical current. I've not seen this done, but I suppose you could do a scene where you're sticking balloons to someone with static charges. Hey, whatever floats your boat. I did torture a cat once by charging the balloon on the cat, and I had it set so it was just neutrally buoyant, and the cat moved away and the balloon came along. Did I mention I'm going to say this?
Science rules.
He was having fun with it, I think. He likes to chase stuff. Then you go up to TENS and EMS, where you're putting current through the body. The idea to create sensation, there's that electrical shocky sensation, pain, fear, muscle movement. With EMS, you can really get some muscles cranking. I don't want to go too heavy into safety issues on this one. It's all out there. I want to say it's been done to death, and maybe that's the wrong way to put that. But
I appreciate that way, though.
Well, it would be easy to chew up an hour or two just in the safety aspects. And if anybody watching, if you have any questions, Dr. VonHertz on FetLife, Dr. VonHertz at Gmail, contact me. I'm wide open. I'm happy to answer questions. There's only so much time in a day, but I will do what I can, because that's part of it for me too, is helping other people. I don't do, I am a vendor. I don't do this to make money, because if I did, I got to know it all. So, I sacrificed a couple of electrodes and looked at what they did. And I happened to run into a glass blowing class at a makerspace here locally. Cool, sign me up. And within a month or so, I had my first functional electrode. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. And that was, I think it was about 3 a.m. I was the only one in the shop, and I got it to where I thought it might work. Plugged it into a wand and it lit up. Man, I really wanted a pipe organ. That was one of those moments. Yes, I've got it working.
A diabolical engineer, I see.
Yeah, well, to go from TENS EMS, the violet wand, it's the high voltage thing, it's that sizzle. I'm not going to try and get that across on my headset microphone, because I like this headset too much. And aside on safety of electrical devices, my cell phone is way the hell over here. It's about 1 meter away, and I think that's reasonably safe. I know what it takes to destroy those electronics, because I've done it. I wear hearing aids, and I'm not wearing them now, because I'm going to be turning this stuff on and off. And the headset, as I said when we were setting up, many people would call it a calculated risk, but since there's no math involved, I'll say it's a deliberate risk.
I like that.
Yeah, it could die, and I'm prepared to deal with that. I did a scene once using TENS and a violet wand, and I didn't know whether the TENS units would survive. But it did. Looking into it, okay, looks at least 50-50 that they'll survive. I still won't guarantee it. Your units are different than mine, different situation. And one of the worst things that I hear from people is, well, I did it and it didn't cause any problems. Okay. Buzz, click. Must be safe. That's the same logic. So yeah, I did it. I took the risk, and it worked out okay. But I was prepared to lose the gear. I also do lightning photography, and that's one of the deals I had to make with myself. Look, if it gets too dangerous, I'm going to ditch the gear and go. And that could cost me $10,000.
Oh, I'm a photographer. Trust me, I know. I shoot Sony, and every time I want a new lens, the next
Sony,
lens I want
yes.
$2,000, and I want a telephoto, and but
yes,
I don't want to get lost in that. We have a question from the audience.
It's a level of risk, and deciding what level of risk you're willing to take. And in what we do, it's also the level of risk you're willing to expose someone else to. And I want to close the loop on this. I have put a ton of effort into this stuff to answer questions where, like that X-ray question, until that was definitively answered, people were taking more risk than they knew they were.
Yeah.
Now, how much more, I can't really say. The expense of making those measurements is large, but it's a risk that doesn't enhance your scene. So I would say
it's unnecessary.
Yeah, why take the risk if it's not doing anything for you? Okay. Anyway.
Well, and I appreciate how you worded that. A lot of times we use the word safe, and I really don't think anything we do is safe. I think all we do is mitigate the risks through communication and education.
Yes. When I write about this stuff, I differentiate it by safe in all capital letters. That means there's no conceivable way that anyone could get hurt. And that's a damn high bar to reach. Then I use lowercase safe in quotes for what we do. We've established a certain degree of risk we're willing to take. Yeah, things could go sideways, and we're at least aware of the possibility and willing to deal with it. And then go get the knives out and have fun,
I have some knives out for the weekend, so I'm a connoisseur of sharp things.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a question from the audience. They ask, do you have any hard voltage or amperage numbers that you will not exceed?
Oh, man. There are a few questions that have plagued me in 40 years of doing electronics. And yeah, unfortunately, the real number as far as what will harm a person is current, not voltage. First year electronics, they teach you Ohm's law. E over I equals R, E over R equals I, and so on. You can find out what the current is going to be, but you have to know the voltage and the resistance. If you don't know those two numbers, you can't derive the third number. And for any part of that triangle, you have to know two of the numbers to get the third number. The human body is incredibly messy. I have done measurements where I have put needles under the skin and measured the voltage measured the current as I increase the voltage. And what you would expect is a nice linear line to say, okay, at 1 volt, we get this much current. At 10 volts, we get 10 times that. At 100 volts, we get 100 times the original number. It's very nonlinear. So I can't really give you any useful numbers. The heart is run by, of course, electrical impulses. It is an unstable organ. When they defibrillate you, the word means what it says, and I've been there. I have had my heart removed from my chest once. That's enough. Fibrillation is when your heart is not pumping, it's just jittering and not doing anything useful. So they hit you with the paddles, and that is basically a Control-Alt-Delete on the heart. It stops, and then it starts going again, hopefully in the right rhythm. If not, they nail you again. So you want to keep away from current that would go through the heart. And even that is difficult to figure. If I put, 110s electrode in each hand, Obviously, the current's going to come down my arm, either one, doesn't matter. And it's going to go across my chest. It's going to go across the entire volume of my chest from front to back. And it will curve. There'll be a kind of a curved path. It'll go through the heart, but how much of it is going through the heart? Don't know. And when you're in a situation like this, you should, my advice to you is to err on the safe side. You know, if you have an electrode here and one here, the current is not going to be venturing off, you know, going wherever over here. It's going to stay sense. Almost entirely where you put it. So when you're new, play distally. Play on the extremities. You know, the penis is an extremity as far as this is concerned. I wish I had I wish I could tell you, oh, this many volts or this many amps. Voltage is kind of bullshit. So this is a little toy I picked up from China. The voltage is unknown. I don't have a way to measure this, but it's throwing sparks about 6 inches. And that should work out to somewhere up around 100,000 volts. And there's one electrode in this hand and one, you know, I'm sparking to the other hand. I should be dead, right? I'm not, because the current out of this thing is limited. It's high enough that it burns things. There's where it hits my hand, there's a little orange spot, and that's a little bit of flesh being burned away. So the current in the small time scale is high. I would venture to say probably a couple of amps, but the time over which that is present is very short. So all the muscles through here have no chance to react to it. They're, you know, as far as they're concerned, nothing happened. I work with high voltage. It's not unusual for me to get hit with a couple thousand volts. If there's some current behind it, yeah. One of the, you know, back in the days of the old cathode ray tube TVs, the TV repairman would get injured from getting shocked, but not by the shock, but by the sudden yanking of the hand out from the sharp stamped metal case, which is like razor blades. Yeah. You know, you cut the shit out of yourself. You know, the shock, not that big of a deal. I don't know of anyone who was ever significantly injured by the shock, but cut by the chassis, oh yeah. And that, you know, this is another thing with electrical play. The bottom may make unanticipated moves. It's up to you, the top, to try to make sure that they can't be hurt. Could they roll off the table on the far side? Maybe you need a spotter. I'm pretty sure there's a lady listening who was in a camping environment with me, and we did an electrical scene, and it was tens, and things were going pretty well, and then she kicked the knobs. Oh. We went from a 3 to about a 12. Oh. And this is where the prepared top lunges for the nearest connection and yanks them apart. But yeah, it's as a top, it's up to you to think ahead. What could go wrong and what can I do about it? Don't let it wreck the scene. But I mean, you don't want to spend the whole night preparing for every little weird thing that could possibly happen. That's bullshit. But you also don't want to launch into a scene and come out the back end going, damn it, I should have seen that coming, and now we're going to the emergency room. And if you must, then go. You know, medical health trumps all. And do not lie to the doctors. they don't care. They've seen it all, and if they haven't, they'll be amused. But, you know, don't lie to the medical people. They're trying to help you. They need to know exactly what happened. And, you know, you should be facing that long before you're negotiating a scene. You should already have that in your head. You know, this is how I'm going to handle it if things go really sideways, because they can. And, you know, you screw around enough, they will.
Well, and that's like, I've dabbled with electrical. I will never say it's my forte. I got lost more in the science of this stuff than actually the enjoyment of playing. And something we talked a little bit about off air, more so what I enjoyed out of it is the inherent fear that electric creates. You know, it's similar to fire or a knife, right?
Yep.
Don't get me wrong, there's like some fear or hesitation when it comes to like rope suspension. But when you have something like, you know, like the Tesla coil you just had, and you're shooting a 6-inch, it
Yeah.
raises some eyebrows.
Yeah, I love this thing. I mean, it's I think it was about $50. There are better models available now. This one I have to push the button once per spark, and I'm pushing there. It's a little unreliable. Later models, you hold it down and it does the sparky thing all by itself. But yeah, that's obviously not, it looks great. Theatrically, it's wonderful. But it's really way less energy than the violet wand.
So
But
would you
looks
compare it
good.
to like static electricity then?
Well, it isn't. It's high frequency, short pulses of high frequency electricity. But yeah, it feels similar to static electricity.
Okay, fair enough.
The way that let me turn the light off for a second. I don't know how well this is coming through. The way that this big tree of discharge happens, if I can get it to happen. Come on. This is the most temperamental little gizmo.
It's just being a brat.
It knows we're on the air. Well, anyway, the way that this builds this huge amount of spark, it actually does it in very short time intervals. We're talking microsecond level. It creates a pulse, which ionizes a little bit of air, and then it stops. But that air is still ionized for a few milliseconds. And then it does it pulse again. Well, the ionized air is about as conductive as wire. So the electricity hits the spike on the end, goes right down the ionized path, and then, oops, I can't go anymore, so it ionizes some more air. You do that about 100 times, and you end up with this beautiful brush discharge, which is nowhere near the voltage that you think it is, because it has built up basically a tree of wires made of thin air.
And the further it goes, the more it's losing, right?
Right.
Okay.
That's why it can only go so far, and then there's too much loss. That's one of the things I engineered with my big red cable. I've seen a number of vendors out there who say that their cables are zero loss. Well, that is impossible. I just know high voltage, high frequency current is very hard to contain. And when your wire is cable TV wire or zip cord, I have seen some pretty ludicrous shit out there. There's a bunch of engineering that goes into a cable for low loss with high frequency, high voltage power. And that's what's in my cable. I cannot make it zero loss. No one can.
That's just because of the science.
Yeah.
Fair. So, like, we circled around that voltage. To give some perspective, what kind of voltage does like the violet ray or the violet wand have that you were just showing?
Well, this particular model is a violet wanda, quote unquote, long run wand. Getting that? The standard BD10 from Electrotechnic Products in Chicago will give you 50 to 60,000 volts.
Oh, wow.
I don't have a precise way to measure that. It's difficult. It's a short spike, and I have very good measuring equipment, but not for that voltage range. So I like my equipment a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm just not going to try, but roughly 50, 60,000 volts. On their webpage, they claim that the current is some very low number. I forget what they quote, but it's completely wrong. Now, current is different. Voltage can reach out and damage things.
Current kills.
Current creates a magnetic field. So what I did to measure this was I took a high-speed scope and a current probe and created a platform, copper plate platform as a reference, and I sparked the violet wand to a wire that runs down to the copper plate. And around that wire is the current clamp. So the current clamp is not seeing any high voltages. I wasn't risking $20,000, $30,000 worth of test equipment to make the measurement. The measurement that I made, and I'm extremely confident in, is 3 to 4 amps. Now that sounds fantastic, but it's also very short in time, about 100 nanoseconds. So your muscles have no chance at all to react to this. The evidence is there. When we light up this thing and spark to something, I'm gonna get shocked again. Now there's the purple in the middle, which is
it is interfering with your microphone.
Yeah, it's ionized nitrogen. And then at both ends, if you can see it, there's a little bit of bright blue.
Can you raise it a little bit? Raise it just a little bit? There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you see the bright blue?
Yeah.
That's aluminum oxide. The aluminum can.
And that's pulling it from the aluminum can?
Yeah.
Interesting.
A few atoms at a time. You can pay for that as a machining service. They call it electric discharge machining. So it is producing enough heat to vaporize that aluminum metal and then ionize it. So at that tiny, tiny point, there's a lot of power being dissipated, but not for a long time. So you have the Ohm's law triangle, which is volts, current, and resistance. And then volts times current equals power. And power multiplied by time equals joules, Joules. And the unit there is watt seconds. So you going back to the defibrillator, charge it to 300. That's watt seconds. When they hit you in that, a tenth of a second, it's going to dissipate 300 watt seconds. So in a tenth of a second, it's going to dissipate in you 3 kilowatts. That's a lot.
Sounds like it.
But, they don't really care that it might hurt.
They're trying to save your life.
Well, that's it. They need your heart stopped now so that it can try to restart. If it can't restart on their own, in the ambulance, there's almost nothing they can do. They can give you various drugs, but that just encourages the heart to go. If the heart is damaged to where it won't go, well, you're toast, dude. Been there, done that.
So I think my next question for you, I mean, we've gone all over and it's all really been great. And I agree, we don't really want to get into the safety. That's its own episode in itself, and that's really not what this podcast's for, not the 101, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But what are some of the common misconceptions around electric play? Like earlier you discussed about producing x-rays, that it was impossible, right? What are some more
Yeah.
common misconceptions that are potentially dangerous?
Well, with EMS, TENS and EMS, I'm not aware of all that much. Just basically keep yourself safe by using commercial equipment, even if it's, like the, what is that, the 232, kind of a large TENS unit. I mean, it's designed for what we do. But the people who designed it know what they're doing. There's a thing out there, I've heard it called a Davy box. It's basically an audio amplifier and a transformer to kick the voltage up. That is moving in the direction of not safe. Your audio output, your audio amplifier might be 10 watts. Okay, you go through this transformer. Now you have enough voltage to push 10 watts through a human. 10 watts, well, that's 10 watts for 1 second is 10 joules. And we know, I don't know what the lower number is, but from just casual observation, we know that 200 or 300 joules will stop your heart. 10 probably won't.
But do we want to risk it?
Exactly. Why are you taking this risk? Now, I've demonstrated, there's tons of stuff on my FetLife profile about violet wands and x-rays, and I'm looking for a particular piece here. This is all live stuff. This is a recent acquisition. That's an x-ray tube.
Interesting.
Now, the difference between this and a light bulb is this little copper bit at the top. And I'm sure this is difficult to see. If it's not on my profile picture, I will get it there in a couple of days. I'm as I said, I'm right, as soon as we're done here, I'm hot footing it to the armpit of Nebraska for Aurora pictures. But this is very similar to a regular light bulb. It's got a little hot filament down here. The only difference is this little metal piece at the top. And the argument was made way back when that it was impossible because you can't make x-rays without an x-ray tube. Well, how were they discovered then? Because Rutherford didn't have any x-ray tubes because nobody knew what x-rays were. He hadn't named them yet. He didn't know. It's sitting off screen. I have a Van de Graaff generator. Of course I do. Sitting on the side. He was working with this and a Crookes tube, and the Crookes tube shoots electrons out and they hit a metal target. Typically it's shaped like a German Iron Cross. And then there's a fluorescent screen. And the point of the demo is that the electrons come out. They didn't know they were electrons then. The stuff comes out, hits this metal screen, and that stops it. And where it isn't stopped by the screen, it lights up the fluorescent screen. Well, Rutherford was playing with this with a fairly powerful Tesla coil to excite it. And he noticed that a fluorescent screen that was sitting on the side, just, lab stuff, was lighting up. I'm like, how the hell? So he put black paper around everything because it must be some kind of light getting out of his apparatus. Nope, Didn't slow it down at all. It turns out that when you accelerate electrons, which is, what we're doing here, 50,000 out. 50, I'm as good as electro boom some days. 50,000 volts is accelerating these electrons, but you can see the sparks. They're running into air as they try and get from point A to point B. And they're heating that air up to the point where it glows. And actually, if you catch it just right with a little bit bigger power source than this, you can start burning the nitrogen in the air. Okay. But inside of a light bulb or inside of an X-ray tube, there's a high vacuum. So there's nothing to slow the electrons down. And so when they leave, very quickly, they're almost at the speed of light. And when they hit the glass, or in the case of the X-ray tube, when they hit that little metal reflector, a process goes on called Bremsstrahlung radiation. It's German and it means decelerating. So the electron moving at nearly the speed of light, well, E equals mc squared. And when it stops, it's got to give up that extra energy somewhere. And it ends up as gamma rays. Now, I could light this tube up and demonstrate that it's producing X-rays. I don't particularly need to do that. But just a regular light bulb, there are two types, and they're hard to tell apart unless you know what to look for. The ones to stay away from are the high vacuum bulbs. But of course, they're not labeled. Nobody says, oh, high vacuum bulb. It's what they care about. A fish tank bulb, the kind of long, skinny ones, they don't want the glass getting too hot. So the infill is a vacuum. Or Christmas tree bulbs, same reason. Most light bulbs, we're talking, old school incandescent light bulbs, are filled with some sort of gas. Could be argon, could be nitrogen, whatever's cheap, really, they don't care. Some bulbs are filled with hydrogen because it removes heat quickly. This is a bulb where we want to flash it on and off very quickly. This is like 1960s Las Vegas technology. The way that you can tell, and light bulbs are tons of fun to play with, but the way you can tell the difference, when you light up your light bulb using your wand, if you see streamers of gas inside the bulb, kind of, spraying out, I would say it's extremely unlikely you're going to get X-rays from that. I've never seen it happen. I have the gear. I spent an inordinate amount of money to make those measurements. Also got me into gamma ray spectroscopy as a hobby. But on the ones where you don't see the gas inside glowing, you will usually see the glass itself glowing. I do not know yet whether that is the X-rays causing that glow or whether it's hard ultraviolet. Some of these measurements are just too difficult to make. I can't keep dumping money into obscure gear. But basically, if you don't see the gas streamers and you do see the glass glowing, you're probably producing X-rays. And I don't know how this is adding to your scene. So why take the risk?
Makes sense. And just to be clear, we've talked a lot about light bulbs, and I don't necessarily we made the connection of light bulbs and electric play. If you want to go ahead and make that connection for us.
Well, back to these guys. They're very pretty bulbs. They glow nicely. You use an adapter socket to put them onto your wand, and it's just another kind of pretty.
Oh, wow.
But because of the large surface area, it's low intensity.
Okay.
And this may be just perfect for some bottoms, and for others, it's like, nah, whatever. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see the glow?
A little bit.
Yeah, look how far away the wand is.
It has to be about a foot.
Yeah, that's the electric field.
And so then, is it safe to say when you get closer, close the distance, the glow is gonna intensify to the point?
By the inverse square law, when you cut the different distance in half, it'll be 4 times as intense. 1/3 the distance, 9 times as intense. And
Oh, wow.
as you approach 0, those numbers get kind of silly. But the point that I wanted to make there, well, what if it's my cell phone and my wand's here? Now, because I know this bulb is filled with neon gas and that particular color is neon, I can tell you it takes 55 volts to ionize neon. And so I know that the electric field, when we were about like this and it was glowing slightly, was about 55 volts at that distance. The processor in your cell phone runs at about 1 volt. All of the teeny tiny, I mean, it's almost unimaginably tiny transistors, they have a maximum voltage rating, and it's in single-digit volts. So if you are subjecting it to a 55-volt field, you're pushing it.
So don't have your cell phone in your pocket if you're playing with electric.
It's an unnecessary risk. Now, of course, cell phones are handled by people all day, every day, and they're not taking care of electrostatic discharge. So the designers put some effort into it, but I'll guarantee you nowhere in the product requirements document does it say must withstand full output from a no. No. So, this cell phone is probably about $1,000, and I really don't want to destroy it. And what does it do for my scene to have it near me? I mentioned before I have my hearing aids out. My hearing aids are $1,500 a piece. Now, sitting on my ear, they're very unlikely to get exposed to much energy. But I'm not willing to place a $3,000 bet on that. And it's worse than that.
What's safe distance? Like, I'm playing in my bedroom, like most adults. I have a TV, I have a Roku, I have a laptop, I have a tablet, I have a cell phone. Like, I'm sure it's not an easy answer, but is there just like a 6 foot away? Is that enough? 10 foot in another building in a Faraday cage? Like,
well, yeah, it's there's that Clint Eastwood movie, Do You Feel Lucky, Punk? That's really what it comes down to. The inverse square law works both ways. So if I'm 1 foot away and we saw the bulb lighting up, okay, that's probably too close. Okay, so if I go to 2 feet, we're getting 1/4 of the energy that we were at 1 foot. It's safer. Okay. But in order to cut it down by the same amount again, we'd have to go from 2 to 4 feet.
And then that's going to make it 1/9 the power?
It's one of these curves. So when you're
Okay.
really up against the source, it's dangerous. Okay, move away a little bit, it comes down significantly. Double the distance, it doesn't even come down by half, just barely half. So at some point, you're not really accomplishing anything.
That
And
makes
the other part that I was getting to, electronics don't always fail immediately. In the industry, we obsess over this thing called incipient failures. I design electronics, and when they're built in the factory, everybody is wearing every bit of ESD gear there is. We spend a shitload of money getting those electric fields down, because inside your semiconductors, you have layers, a layer of metal, a layer of insulator, a layer of metal. The insulator layers are a few angstroms thick. We're talking you could count the atoms.
Mm.
So now you overstress it with voltage, and okay, the voltage powers through the insulator, creates a crater. There are photos of these online. They're a little hard to find, but you can get electron micrographs of an IC where it's been overstressed by voltage, and you'll see a little crater literally blown in the top of the chip in those layers. Well, if that didn't kill it right away, some more spooky things happen. Okay, everything is warm. It's not at absolute zero temperature. So the metal atoms are vibrating. They're not really anywhere in particular. They're just kind of in this area. Okay, when we put voltage on those metal parts inside the chip, that produces an electric field, which if this has more charge on it than this, or opposite charges, they will be attracted to each other. The metal in these layers is vibrating, and because of the electric field stress, it will ooze over the crater and down into the crater and then short out later.
Mm.
And that failure can happen anywhere from minutes to years later. So it's entirely possible to damage the hell out of your device and not know it for 6 months.
I like my electronics, and
Yep.
actually, I think you have one of the same violet rays I have. Is that a Renulife in your back behind you?
Oh, yes, it is.
I think I have that same model.
That one needs to be restored. I have way too many projects. I did bring a play toy though, this one. So violet wands, go back to the 20s. This was serious medicine. People thought, well, they knew from Galvani's experiments that, okay, muscles work by electricity. Okay, somehow or other. I mean, they're putting all this stuff together for the first time. Now, can you read that? Do I have
Not
enough room?
quite.
Lady Midnight.
Caution. What's that?
I'll read it. Lady Midnight and I were at this thing called Vintage Voltage here in Colorado. It's antique stereos, all kinds of stuff. So the tag says, caution, you will burn out this appliance if you connect it to other than 32 volt current.
It's farm current.
You knew it. I'm impressed. Yes.
I like I said, I know enough to be dangerous or dumb.
So back in the day, farms were not on the grid.
Yep.
Farmers being cheap, they used the same plugs as 110. And in the cities, it was 110 AC or DC, who knows? Well, this little wand runs off of 32 volt farm current.
Interesting.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, okay, an old wand. Yeah. But then I saw
That
the
can't be that
tag.
common.
Oh, no, they made them in 110 and 220, but I had never even heard of a 32-volt farm wand.
I mean, I'm not in the world like you, but I haven't, definitely not. Interesting enough, my Renew Life, I have all of the provenance. I have the original warranty paper, the original
Nice.
receipt, the original paperwork. I believe, don't quote me, it was purchased in 1929 by a woman, which I thought was kind of interesting because it's like right around the Great Depression area.
Yeah,
Not a
that was
lot of
some
money.
serious money.
And yeah, she paid $27.50 for it.
Yeah,
So,
that was some serious change.
but
Well, that's it. Back in the day, they thought these were serious medical devices, and we still don't know that they're wrong. The FDA shut down violet wands as a medical device because there was no documented evidence that they were right. Nobody.
But is it the inverse also true? Is there no document evidence that they're wrong?
Well, let me think about that. Okay, so the first rule of medicine is first do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm on a number of medications. I have heart problems. I've got my little chemistry set that I have to take. And the doctor has to look at each of those medications and decide, okay, this has some significant side effects to it, but one of the conditions I have is called atrial fibrillation, AFib.
Familiar? Yep.
Yeah, it really sucks, I'll tell you. Now I'm on a couple of medications that clamp that down. Now VFib is the one, with the guys in the ambulance and they're putting the paddles on them. That's VFib. That'll kill you right now. AFib will kill you later. When you're in AFib, your heart isn't pumping as well as it should. And so they want to get it back to normal. But anyway, each medication has risks and it has benefits. And what you're paying your doctor for is knowing how to make intelligent compromises to say, okay, it's worth the risk of this drug because you've got this other thing going on that's more risky. It's risk management. Where have we heard that before? But if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to screw it up. And it's, that's kind of been my crusade with electrical play, and especially the violet wand, is to get rid of a lot of the bullshit that I've seen out there of, people claiming that something's dangerous when it really isn't, or worse, claiming that something is safe when it's really dangerous. If you're claiming something's risky and you're making a bigger claim than it deserves, okay, people may play more conservatively. Well, okay, maybe they're missing out on some fun. That's the big downside. If you are underplaying the risk, then people are taking more risk than they should, and somebody can get harmed. I mean, hurting people, well, it's part of the game. Harm, non-negotiated harm, is not.
So, I think the motto is hurt many, harm none, right?
Well, do what you negotiated. Stay within that box, but don't expose people to unnecessary risk. And if you don't know enough about it, how do you know? And especially if you're relying on some bullshit information, it's a tough thing, right? I'm a vendor. Should you trust me? Yeah, maybe. There are other vendors out there who will tell you pretty much exactly the opposite of what I say on some points. Now what? Well, I quote my sources. You know, I've pretty much relied on FetLife as a repository for all my writings. I tell you what sources I'm using to draw these conclusions. I'm showing you how I made the measurements, documenting the equipment that I use.
So following scientific practice.
Yeah, anybody who with the time, inclination, and money can follow along behind me and replicate those experiments and say, hey, you know, well, I found a problem in your experiment or not. I can get it wrong, but in all cases, I would say, okay, well, let's take the X-ray thing for as an example. Let's say I'm totally batshit wrong about it, and it is impossible. Which I have a mountain of data that says otherwise, but let's just say I'm wrong. Okay, so I've discouraged you from using certain types of light bulbs in your play. Boy, that really cost you a lot, didn't it?
Fair. Yeah.
But if you're out there running one of these bulbs, you're in contact with the skin. We don't know how much X-ray flux you're generating, but one of the things that I can tell you, because of the operating voltage of this wand, the X-rays that you're putting out are very well absorbed in skin. And that's not a good thing.
It makes me think of like the old foot X-ray to like get your foot size.
Yep.
Right. And they didn't know the risk until.
Well,
wow, fair. At least that's what I've heard, nonetheless.
They knew the risks at some level, but yeah, I used one of those. I'm that old.
Oh,
I remember that. Yeah, wow, that's my foot. Well, fair. So if you go to the dentist for an X-ray or any medical X-ray, between the X-ray tube and you, there will be a sheet of aluminum of a particular thickness, 2 or 3 millimeters, I think. And what that does is it absorbs the low energy X-rays, which they don't do anything for the imaging. They manage risk again. These low energy X-rays will just stop in your skin and cause problems. They just run up your dose. So they filter those out with that little, I mean, you know, it's a medical thing, right? It's precision and it's got to come from the right source and it's got to be checked, but it's a 2 millimeter sheet of aluminum. So, you know, if I'm wrong about that hazard, I have encouraged you to remove an item from your play that probably isn't really helping much anyway. If I'm right, then I'm saving you from an unknown amount of risk. Unknown amounts of risk scare me more than known amounts of risk.
I agree with that statement.
Designing life safety equipment. I don't want to get into my former employer, but the phrase is, if this doesn't work, somebody dies. Okay, so we design very carefully, test the snot out of it. Then I go beat the shit out of it unofficially, throw it around in the parking lot, bash on it, bring it back in, and okay, does it still meet all of its test requirements? Because I don't want somebody to be relying on a piece of gear that I designed and have it not work. Sure. And, you know, you're going to die if it doesn't work. But
so we are getting you did say you wanted to go see the Aurora tonight, and I want to be respectful for that. And I have a couple more questions I'd like to ask.
Go for it.
So we kind of touched a little about like the fear that electrical play can create. So the question that I have for you regarding around that is, what are some of the psychological effects of electrical play?
Okay. Well, I did a scene once using the electric fly swatter.
Okay, I got one.
Yeah, I picked up my first one at Goodwill. It was in a children's toy bin. And It was marked fear on one side and pain on the other side.
Okay.
Guess I better buy that one.
Yeah.
So this girl is very nervous with electricity. And, you know, it's got the button. I like the button on the BD10 ones as well because I can control it instantly. I can put it
Instead
on
of
you
a
and
foot
then
pedal
turn.
or something like that.
Yeah. So I'm just running this fly swatter, and she's just absolutely scared shitless that I'm gonna shock her. Of course I am. But you know, I control when I'm doing that. And we got a few people watching now. People are kind of circling around. So while she's all worked up and you know kind of coming down a little bit, I just popped the battery cover and took the batteries out, and I showed everybody there's no batteries. The lady in question just walked in. Hello.
Hello. Yes, he likes telling the story.
So,
I'm a cheap girl.
So we're continuing to do the scene, only there's no batteries in the fly swatter.
I'm getting jittery just thinking
And
about it.
yeah, I doubt they can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, not well.
Yeah, no, that worked very well. And it was all on the fact that she was scared as hell of getting shocked. And once I had her in that state, it didn't matter whether she was getting shocked or not. And it worked well. That was, we both had tons of fun. And at the end, yeah, aftercare, you know, she does pretty well coming down from those things. But yeah, you gotta kind of ramp down. That's the stuff I have the most trouble putting into words. I can do it, but the language is difficult, and it's going to vary completely between different people, I think. So you know, look for the connection. You're starting to play. Some things are going to be okay. Yeah, you did that. Well, whatever. And other things are going to be oh, okay. Okay, let's do some more of that and see what happens. Let's ramp that up a little bit. Try to find that space. It basically what we're doing is the adult version of a carnival ride.
Sure.
You go on the ride and it's a, you know, the little kiddie rides. Okay, it's a sensation you're not used to, and it's fun from that point of view. Then we get to the you know, death-defying roller coasters. You're going on there and you're looking at it going, yeah, I know I'll be fine. You know, everybody who gets on gets off, you know, I know I'll be fine. And they strap you in. My favorite one is the one that takes you up about 6 stories, runs you out, and then drops you.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And I ride it like this. I don't hold on. But you know, you get out, you get lifted up to that point, and then you roll out there, and then there's about 3 seconds between when you stop and when it goes click, and you're really trying hard to convince yourself that you're gonna be okay. Yeah, that's what we do. And those rides, you know, they have their problems. There's been in the news in the last 6 months or so. At least
Carnival
one
ride not that long ago.
Well, the carnival ride, the big honking welded pieces were cracking. Holy shit.
Yeah.
But
So
you know, they go ahead.
I would say in some of that, you touched on something, 2 things. One of the questions that I have, but I'll pause that one. But you touched on something that was a question from the audience, and you were talking about meeting people. Their question is, how do you find people who are interested in being exposed to electricity? Do a lot of people have an interest in it, or do you have to introduce people to it?
Yes. If you have beyond just a bare minimum of skill, do a tasting. People love to experience new things, and you will have some people where it's like, yeah, that was really fun, and others are like, you know, okay, next. that will help. Basically, it's like meeting people in any other venue. You got to get out there. You've got to take the first step. Sometimes ask, hey, would you like to do a violet wand scene or a tens unit scene? And then, you've got to negotiate and find out what's okay, what's not okay. Stick to that. It's, I've heard so many people say so many things. I want to say this was Jay Wiseman. I could be wrong. But what was said was, it's better to leave them wanting more than to go too far. Mm-hmm. If you end the scene and everybody's happy and, wow, I just wish it could have gone longer. Okay, it's a really good ending to a scene. If you get to the end of the scene and they're going, that wasn't good. You went too far. Something went wrong. We try to avoid that. But if you're doing stuff that's edgy, if you're doing stuff that you've not done before, those things are going to happen. As a top, you have to minimize the risk. It's okay. There was an incident on the East Coast. I also teach laser branding. There was a guy on the East Coast that was doing it with these spherical ball lenses, and he wouldn't teach how he does it. It's his special thing, and he doesn't want anyone else to know. So, of course, some event comes around, and some guy, because it has to be a guy, decided he was going to do it without any intro to it. And, of course, being a guy, he used a bigger lens.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. I didn't really know that there was such a thing as a 4th degree burn till then.
Oh, wow.
That's when
I didn't either.
That's when you burn the bone.
Holy shit.
Uh-huh. So
wow. And that's from just,
sunlight. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, you can melt rock with a big enough lens.
Yeah.
The fallacies were primarily that, bigger is better. No. From the laser branding, I can tell you that below 1/10 of a watt, it's going to be extremely slow and probably more painful than what you're up for. At about a watt, it goes reasonably quickly. It's painful. Seems to be a sweet spot. If you went with higher powers, you would be burning very quickly and very deeply. So this is the stuff that you pick up from experience. And there's a saying, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. Better to learn from someone else's mistakes.
That, I don't want to digress too much, but that makes me think. So one of my many interests is I'm a subject matter expert in desktop CNCs. I have a 10-watt laser inside, and in one of the Facebook groups, one of the guys decided to put that to his skin. Now it moves depending, I don't know what specs he had, because you can set the percentage of the laser and how fast it moves.
Yeah.
But hearing you talk, that made me really think he's even more, well, never mind. He probably shouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Well, anything over a watt, 1 watt and over is class 4. And by the rules, a class 4 laser should never allow human skin to be exposed to a class 4 laser. So, like, I have a Snapmaker, which also has a 10-watt laser. And it has a pretty good enclosure, but there are gaps. Well, the enclosure is better than nothing. And the eyewear that came with it was, I'm sure, the lowest cost eyewear they could find in China. So I went to Thor Labs and bought the correct stuff and threw the old stuff away because I only got one set of eyes, and the prospect of going blind absolutely terrifies me. I couldn't continue working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have all my stuff set up on camera at this point.
Acceptable levels of risk. Now, you know, people buy these things and they give them to their kids. And, you know, kids, they will screw around with anything that can be screwed around with.
Oh.
Boy, that's a risk. Not without adult supervision, which should be strongly underlined here. We take a certain level of risk for a certain level of reward. When you actually know what's going on, then you probably know your level of risk. If you're relying on bullshit, well, you're either playing too conservatively, which is not the end of the world, or you're playing too dangerously. The guy with the ball, he thought that he knew what he was doing. And, you know, it just seems to be wired into men, you know, bigger is better. Yeah, there is a certain level of energy when you're damaging humans. There's a certain level of energy that is a good speed to work at. And then there's the level where, oh crap, I'm sorry, I blew a hole through your hand. Oops. We don't want to go there. You know, would a violet wand, if it threw a 1 foot spark, would it be a better wand? It might look cooler, but if it had that much energy and you applied it to a person, and you know, the next thing you know, you're in the ER, well, I doubt that was the scene you had planned.
Fair. So the other thing that you kind of brought up that I wanted to touch on that I think is really important, and personally I'm genuinely curious, is how does aftercare differ for an electrical scene? I mean, outside of the typical, like, you know, cuddles, touch, reconnection, water, in my head, there's more going on with electrical, mainly because I can't see a lot of it, right? And my curiosity wondered, like, is there anything special that I should be concerned about after the fact?
I don't think that it's really all that different. I think it depends more on the person than on what you're doing with them. Blood sugar drops, you know, all the normal stuff. You just put someone into a very highly excited state, whether it's fear or an orgasm, or whatever. You've taken them significantly out of normal. In fact, that was the whole point of the exercise. And now you need to help them come back down to normal and, you know, supervise that transition. Now, when I do laser branding, I check in with people. I can't always do it physically, but, you know, once the branding is done, it's basically a wound. It's a burn. You should treat it like every other burn. But, you know, that part of the aftercare there is to check in and see how things are going. You know, maybe encourage them to go see a doctor if things don't look right. I don't know. People can be kind of irrational in how they deal with that stuff. Oh, I don't want to see the doctor. I don't want to admit. Well, it's kind of turning red and nasty looking. You know, the bacteria don't give a shit. The doctor probably doesn't either, but, you know, it will hurt you worse if you don't. You're just, you know, there's so much stigma attached to what we do. And you look at it, you know, from the alien point of view, right? Okay, so these guys, you know, we come here and they line up a bunch of guys on one side and a bunch of guys on the other side, and then they beat the shit out of each other. and that's okay. And then we go to this other place, and they're kind of careful about what they're going to do, and they talk about what could go wrong and what they want to get out of it, and then they do the thing, and oh, this person got a bruise. Oh my God, call the cops. It's football versus dungeon.
Yeah.
Somehow, you cause a bruise on the football field. That's the big game. Rah.
Yeah.
Cause a bruise in the dungeon. Somebody might call the cops.
Well, as somebody that has not a medical professional but does have a fundamental understanding of some of the legalities, medical professionals specifically in America are legally required, if they speculate abuse, to report it to authority. And the verbiage is very gray, right? If they speculate abuse, and they risk their medical license if they don't report it. So it's really, really tricky. And like you said, I was raised, if you're only honest with three people, the three people should be your attorney, your therapist, and your doctor. You should also be honest with yourself, but that's the three people I was told, right? You should be honest with way more than that, but at least those three people, because they're serving you, they have your best interest.
Yep. Yeah,
So I think,
I have fired at least one doctor. I'm sorry, if you have a problem with my lifestyle, I need a new doctor.
yep. And now where we're at, now we have resources to find kink aware professionals.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I think the main question I have to wrap this up would be is what advice or resources would you offer to anyone that's curious about exploring electric play?
Okay, well, there's a bunch of good groups on FetLife, but like every other online group, there's the people who say they know what they're talking about, and there's the people that do. And you have to learn to figure out who's who. I do have a book I'll recommend, The Manga Guide to Electricity.
Like it already.
I got this on Amazon, and I was totally expecting to just laugh my ass off at the book. And it's actually impressive.
And I feel like it fits in our community.
Yeah, it's got, okay, some of the illustrations are a little hokey, and they've got these kind of typical made-up stories, but it really does cover the subject matter quite well. It's a good basic course in electricity, not as it applies to making humans part of the circuit, but good enough. If you really want the serious end, it's The Art of Electronics by Horowitz and Hill. It's about 3 inches thick and $70, and it's a damn good investment if we want to go that far. Yeah, it's talking to people who know what they're doing. And of course, then we bring up the question of how do you know who knows what they're doing? That's a hard one to answer. You see it in a different light with like a new sub, right? They want to play. They want to play with anybody, and they will latch on to the first person who gives them a shot. And sometimes what you'll hear from the Uber Dom, the guy that's 24 and he's got 50 years experience, oh, trust me, I know everything. I would generally say if someone demands that you trust them, you really shouldn't. I consider myself an expert with this stuff, but I can be wrong. I was doing a fire scene one time, with moose. You know, it's not impossible to go wrong with moose, but it's pretty benign, easy to play with. And I caught a conversation snippet behind me. You know, he's leaving that fire on too long. Huh? Moose is a foam. The gas, the vapor, the flammable vapor is what's burning. The stuff in the middle is at room temperature, slightly warmer, but basically room temperature. As long as there's foam there, you can keep going till it just won't go no more, and then wipe it off. I don't know where he got the idea. It didn't pull me out of the scene enough that I turned around and, you know, got into it with the guy, but you know, I don't know where he was coming from, but I know what I'm doing. I've been doing it for a while, and I'm always looking to learn new stuff, though. I mean, you know, 66 years old, but the last thing you'll hear from me is, well, you should do it my way because I'm more experienced. No, I will learn from the newest person out there if they've got something that I haven't seen before. I don't care. You know, in a professional setting, I have worked with men, with women, worked for men or women. I've worked for people who are way younger than me. I don't care. You know, if you're my boss and you're 20 years old, okay, great. What you want done?
Yeah.
I don't see that kind of stuff. I don't understand seeing it. People are either they have the skills or they don't. And you know, being a boss, right? It's a different skill than doing the work. You know, I have worked for people who should not be trusted with a soldering iron. And I'm down here working on parts that are barely visible to the human eye. Well, I've got the experience, but I'm not, you know, I've never been a manager kind of a person. So I would probably suck in that role. Let's each do the roles that we are good at and not worry about all the other shit. So yeah, you know, somebody shows me a new technique, hey, I'm all over it. I'm always willing to learn. As I've said many times, when I stop learning, get a shovel.
Well, I think we've covered a lot tonight. We've gone all over and back. It was a lot higher level as far as like the science aspect than what I thought. But that's what I wanted, right? I wanted that deeper look into a subject that we don't normally see. We see the surface.
We can go deeper.
Oh, I can imagine. But you got an aurora to see.
Yes, so, I do.
We're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. So thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Dominance Dialogues. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, be sure to subscribe and share. Join us next week for more insightful conversations that challenge the way we think about power, relationships, and ourselves. As always, stay curious, stay intentional, and keep the dialogue going.